Welcome to a spooky episode of Monday Movie Pickup. I don't even know how to start with all these different movies that I got this week, but there was the Shocktober sale from Scream Factory, so I picked up a lot of the Universal Horror movies that I haven't gotten in the past. I already have the Universal Monsters collection. In fact, it should be right here, along with the other Universal Horror sets that came from Shout Factory. But with all of the Universal so-called official horror titles, with the inclusion of the monsters, the list basically goes from the 20s to the 50s. So there's a lot of extra movies that were previously released as part of some different sci-fi sets on DVD. The only time they've ever been released on Blu-ray was through Shout Factory, through individual releases. So we're just going to go through some of those. So here's Tarantula, obviously a pretty popular title. This is one that I often see spoofed, send up something from the 1950s as far as like B-movie sci-fi territory goes. This is usually one of the movies it points to. But from 1955, there's Tarantula. Then we have This Island Earth. I really don't know anything about this movie. I see the thing here that says it's 2.5 years in the making. I don't know exactly what that means. There's a special feature on here that involves Joe Dante, and there's also mention of the 3D Film Archive. They've done some different releases through their own company. Interesting title to buy. Oh, you know, I didn't even look on the inside of Tarantula. I should probably give you a look. I love this because these older movies used to do these like wider spreads for some of their advertising, and it looks like that's what they're doing for some of the back cover art. We have here the Deadly Mantis. I think I've seen this one before, at least if I haven't, I've seen parts of it. There it is, the Deadly Mantis, which includes some other special features. So there's even the Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode on here, so that'll be a fun one to check out. Here's the Monolith monsters. From what I remember about this premise is that every time that you try to destroy these weird structures that just appear out of nowhere, if you try to destroy them, it only creates more. So there you have it, the Monolith monsters. Some different commentaries are on this one. There's that back art, and as you can see, it really looks like what an old school advertisement for the movie would look like. The Tingler. This is actually a movie that we watched in a film class one time. One of those William Castle movies where he was big into the gimmicks. Back when the movie was released, there was some in-theater effect that they would do where they would basically have something feeling the backs of the audiences. There's a part of the movie where it's like pitch black and they're yelling directly at the screen that the Tingler is out there. Watch out, screaming at the audience, and then you hear screams in the movie, and then I guess the theory was then people would be screaming in the theater. So William Castle made some really interesting gimmicky movies. This one is a lot of fun. Vincent Price is in the movie. I remember having fun with this one. Here is the Leech Woman. I mean, this is really getting towards the end of the Universal horror line, so these ones start to get more and more strange as you go along. This cover just has something from the movie itself, so no advertisement or anything. As I get through some of these titles, it's like some of them I've never even heard of, and I was shocked that they were released by Universal rather than just being some random B movie from a lower budget studio. And then the last title I got for Shocktober was Return of the Living Dead. This is the 4K edition. 3 discs and all these special features from the previously released Blu-ray from Shout Factory that went out of print. That is the main reason I bought the movie. I've seen Return of the Living Dead before, love the movie. They did release the sequel through Shout Factory as well, and I believe that title is still available. The third title was released through Vestron, and I think the other sequels have not been released on Blu-ray as of yet, but I've been wanting to get this one for a long time because when the Blu-ray went out of print, that means I missed out on all the special features, and in this case there actually was 2 discs, so there was a whole other disc for special features. So a big release for me to miss out on, but luckily it was re-released on 4K, so I was waiting quite a while to get this. This has been on 4K for a while. I was just waiting and waiting, but for this sale, it finally got down to a low enough price. And just look at all those different special features. It's going to be a lot of fun to dive into this movie again. there was also a Kino sale, and at Kino they also have a bunch of Universal movies that are not available through other sets or anything like that, so a lot of these movies have only been released on Blu-ray through Kino. Here is The Strange Door, a Charles Laughton film, Boris Karloff. You know, I actually just watched The Old Dark House, and it also featured these two actors, so, you know, just some Universal mainstays. But this is actually made a few years later. This was a movie from the 50s, so like with a lot of Kino releases, just some basic commentaries and trailers, but overall, it's great that these movies are at least getting released. May not be a lot of disc art, but whatever. I mean, they're finally hitting Blu-ray, and Kino usually has them for a pretty good price, and for this sale, it was really hard to pass up on this. We don't have the Leech woman, we actually have now the Cobra woman, so like I said, a lot of these 1950s titles, this one's actually from 43, but sometimes it's a question of, are they really Universal Horror? Should they be included? A lot of these are pretty obscure, and you just have to track them down. Not everything has made it onto Blu-ray either. I mean, you still got The Brute Man, was only ever released on a DVD-R, so be cool if at some point that movie gets a Blu-ray release. And then there's like a few other titles out there, but there's the Cobra Woman. We have here more of a comedic one, but it's got Bob Hope, The Ghost Breakers. Again, just some basic commentaries, trailers, but a Bob Hope comedy film, comedy horror, I suppose. And then last thing from Kino, this is Francis the Talking Mule. Why did I need to get 7 different movies featuring Francis the Talking Mule? Well, these were all released through Universal, and it just so happens that one of them is, and you can see the details of the films on the back, one of them is part of the Universal horror line. Sure, Francis in the Haunted House. And you can see there are some of the other details of the movie. A series that really hasn't had a lot of impact in recent years, but this is a movie series. This is a franchise. There is a slipcover. Also, I'm very excited that finally we have Roland West's The Bat. So this was the movie that 1926, it was remade into a sound film, The Bat Whisperers, in 1930 by the same director, and it was that movie that Bob Kane said was the inspiration for Batman. So I got that movie a few weeks ago, and I've been waiting for this movie to get released on Blu-ray. This was all due to a Kickstarter campaign, and now the movie's available through Amazon, deep discount, which is where I got my copy. And this is just a new restoration of the movie. So I haven't given it a watch yet. I'm not entirely sure what the quality of it is. And this is a BDR, just so you know. So this is not a pressed disc, but otherwise, it's cool that they have the movie available. It also comes with an additional short film, The Fraternity Mix-Up, and then there's also a documentary about Roland West that they created for this release. Obscure title, but you know, most of its notoriety is due to the Batman, but even then, technically, I feel like that was actually the Bat Whisperers that was the real inspiration for the Batman, but this is the source. This is the original one. And last but not least, I don't know if this really fits the horror theme, but given that I just saw this version in a theater, I would say it's pretty out there. Horrific? Kind of. But it's an out there kind of movie. I think a lot of people already know the story of Caligula, the way it went, how they made an original cut of the movie, but it was then taken over by Penthouse. They made their own cut, and then that cut got re-edited at a later time and re-released with some trimmed segments. Then there's been other versions of the movie made over the years in different countries. There was a version I believe was done in 2007, and then you have the ultimate cut, which according to the lead actor of the movie, Malcolm McDowell, he said that this is as close as you're going to get to what the movie was supposed to be. I think he described it as like, at least it's like pretty good now. I don't know if he said it was great or anything, but he said it's pretty good now. This one is the Umbrella release, which has a ton of special features on it. 4 discs in all. Well, the 4K has the ultimate cut, and then the other versions all have different cuts of the movies. I don't even know if they really distinguish on the back which disc has which cut. So on this release, they have the ultimate cut, the unrated, uncensored cut. I think that was the release that was done before they trimmed some segments in it. After its initial release. So I think those were done the same year, but this only has the unrated, uncensored cut, not the other cut that was made like immediately after, because this one's 156 minutes. They have the Italian cut, they have an Australian cut, and then they have the pre-release cut. So that one is running 153 minutes. It's one of those things where I'd have to kind of go back to figure out what exactly was different about each cut, but my understanding always was that there was a version that was released, and then Penthouse grabbed it. Well, actually, that version wasn't released, and then the Penthouse got it, released the movie, but added a bunch of their own scenes, and that's the version that most people know now. That version was then trimmed down, and then years later, there were other countries that released it, and then in 2007, they did a different version. I don't think that one's on here at all, unless that's what they mean by the pre-release cut. And then they have the Ultimate Cut, which is the most recent cut. This was one that they did do a short re-release in theaters for. That was the version that I've seen. That's the only version I've seen. There's also two different versions of this Blu-ray. So this is the one that comes from Australia. It is region-free, so like all 4K discs, it's region-free, but the additional Blu-ray discs are also region-free. But there is some controversy with this release I've been reading about. It did initially promote that there was a lossless track for the 4K disc, because the Blu-ray disc has one for the Ultimate Cut. But for whatever reason, it's not a lossless track on the 4K. So I know some people were disappointed in that, and if you are to buy the release that was done for America, and that one was done through Alamo Drafthouse, that one does have a lossless track, but I guess that version of the release only has one additional cut. That additional cut is the theatrical cut, the one that I guess was supposed to be the unrated cut. It was the version that, after all the blowback from the initial release, they trimmed a few minutes out of. So actually, that release doesn't apparently have the right version of the movie that they were promoting. It's actually the censored theatrical cut, if that makes any sense, not the unrated cut that most people are aware of. So that release kind of screwed it up, and then this release sort of screwed it up. The way I see it, I still think this is a great release. The Alamo Drafthouse version has a soundtrack, but it's the soundtrack for the new movie, the new cut of the movie anyway. So I don't know, maybe some Caligula fans are going to be happy enough to buy both movies, because I don't know, it seems like there's been some issues people have been having with these releases, but it's about as close as we're gonna get to owning this many different versions of Caligula. But I mean, it is pretty expensive though, so I mean, there was even a different version of this that Umbrella did that came with like a bunch of goodies. I didn't do that version, I just did the basic release, but even then I think this was running about like $60 some. That was before like the shipping, because it has to ship out of Australia. So I don't know, just do your research before you buy either version of Caligula, because even I'm not entirely even on top of it. I mean, I'm not the #1 Caligula fan, but a lot of people are more aware of what's going on, and you might just, like I said, do your research before you buy either version of the movie on 4K. That should be everything for this week. Happy Halloween, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching the video, and special shout out to Anna, Kirsten, Spencer, and Lucas for supporting me on Patreon. By joining my Patreon, you'll be able to get some exclusive videos, some different vlogs in the future, and you'll be able to request your own movie review. I hope you stick around, Cinephile, and have a happy, productive day.